The river ran fast that afternoon. It had rained hard for 3 days, and the water was brown and full of broken branches. Vivienne walked along the bank with her basket on her arm. She had come to gather wild mint for her mother's tea. The smell of wet earth was thick in the air. Her boots sank a little with each step. She could hear the rush of the water and the call of a crow somewhere behind the trees. The wind pushed at her bonnet, and she reached up to hold it in place. She was 3 miles from the village of Renmore. She was 7 miles from any grand house. She was, as always, alone. She liked it that way. Her mother worried sometimes, but her mother worried about many things. Her father did not worry at all. He was too busy trying to pretend the family was not poor. Vivienne bent down and picked a small handful of mint. The leaves felt cool and slightly rough between her fingers. She could smell them the moment she crushed one. She placed them in the basket and moved on. Then she heard the shout. It was a small shout, a boy's voice. It came from the bend in the river, where the water ran fastest and the bank fell away sharp. She froze for a moment. She listened. The shout came again. Higher this time. Thinner. She dropped the basket. She ran. Her skirt caught on a bramble, and she pulled hard, and it tore. She did not stop. The mud tried to hold her boots. She did not stop. Her bonnet fell back on her neck, and the wind took her hair, and she did not stop. When she came around the bend, she saw him. He was small, maybe 7 years old, maybe 8. He was in the middle of the river, and the river was carrying him fast. His head went under. It came up. His arms beat the water like a bird with a broken wing. He was not screaming now. He was too tired to scream. Vivienne did not think. She kicked her boots off. She pulled the tie of her cloak. She threw the cloak on the ground. She ran 3 steps and jumped. The cold hit her like a hand across the face. Her breath left her in one hard rush. The current grabbed her at once. She had known the river all her life. She knew how it moved. She knew where the deep places were, and she knew where the roots of the old willow reached out under the water like fingers. She swam, not toward the boy directly. She swam ahead of him, angled with the current, so that the water would carry him to her. He came at her fast. She caught his coat with one hand. His face was white. His lips were blue. His eyes were half closed. She pulled him against her chest and she kicked hard toward the bank. The willow. She needed the willow. She twisted in the water, and there it was, the long, low branch that hung out over the current. She grabbed it with her free hand. The bark bit into her palm. She held on. She held on for a long time. Her arm burned. Her legs kicked slowly. The boy was heavy against her. She could feel his small heart through his wet coat. She could hear her own breath, loud in her ears, ragged and hot. "Please," she whispered. She did not know who she was whispering to. She only knew that if she let go, they would both go under. Hand over hand, she pulled them to the bank. She dragged him up onto the wet grass. She fell down beside him. She turned him on his side. He coughed. He coughed again. Brown water came out of his mouth. He gasped. He began to cry. Vivienne began to cry too, but only for one moment. Then she stopped. Crying was not useful. She pushed her wet hair out of her face and pulled the boy up into her lap and wrapped her arms around him. "You are safe now," she said. Her voice shook. "You are safe." He shook against her. His teeth clicked. His whole small body was cold as stone. She rubbed his back. She rubbed his arms. She said his safety over and over, quietly, into the top of his wet hair. "What is your name?" she asked, when his breathing had slowed. "Tobias," he whispered. "Tobias," she said. "That is a very good name." He turned his face against her shoulder. He smelled of the river, and of something else underneath, something clean, like soap made with lavender. His clothes, even wet and torn, were fine. The buttons on his coat were silver. She saw that now. She did not care whose son he was. She only cared that he was breathing. She lifted him. He was heavier than he looked. She staggered a step. She found her cloak and wrapped him in it. She left her basket. She left her boots. She walked barefoot through the mud and the wet grass, holding him against her, and she walked toward home. Her mother screamed when she saw them at the door. "Not me," Vivienne said. "Him." Warm water. Blankets now. Her mother was a small woman, but she moved fast when she had to. She set the water to boil. She pulled every blanket in the house. Vivienne stripped the wet clothes off the boy and wrapped him in wool by the fire. His color came back slowly. He fell asleep against her shoulder. Her father came in from the yard. He looked at the boy. He looked at the fine little coat drying by the fire, the silver buttons catching the light. He looked at his daughter, still in her wet dress, her hair still wet. Her feet bare and cut from the walk. "Whose child is that?" her father said. "I do not know," said Vivienne. Her father knelt by the fire and picked up the coat. He turned it over. On the inside of the collar, stitched in dark thread, was a crest, a wolf's head between two stars. Her father went very still. "What is it?" said her mother. "Ashcombe," said her father. His voice was quiet. "That is the crest of the house of Ashcombe." Vivienne did not move. The boy slept against her. She could feel his breath on her neck. It was warm and even now. The house of Ashcombe. The Duke of Ashcombe. The man whose offer she had refused. She had never met him. That was the truth of it. She had never once been in the same room as the Duke of Ashcombe. But 6 months ago, a letter had come. A formal letter. Her father had opened it with shaking hands. The Duke had lost his wife 3 years before. The Duke had a young son. The Duke wished to marry again, not for love, the letter had said plainly, but for the good of the boy and for the good of his house. He had been given her name by a mutual acquaintance. He had made his offer. The offer would have saved her family. Her father had made that clear. There were debts. There were creditors. There was a mortgage on the small farm that would come due within the year. The Duke's offer had a settlement large enough to clear every debt and leave her mother comfortable for the rest of her life. Vivienne had said no. She had said no quietly. She had said it once. She had not raised her voice. She had said, "I will not marry a man I have never met, whose feelings toward me cannot exist because he does not know me, and whose feelings toward his own life are cold enough that he can put a price on a wife by letter." Her father had shouted. Her mother had cried. Vivienne had gone up to her small room, and she had shut the door, and she had not opened it for 2 days. Then she had come down and gone on with her life, and her father had written the refusal, and no one had spoken of it again. The debts still grew. The farm was still failing. But she had said no, and no was what she meant. Now his son slept in her arms. He must be returned, her father said. His voice was low. Tonight, at once. "Look at him," Vivienne said. "He can hardly stand. He will not be moved tonight." Vivienne. "He will not be moved tonight." Her voice was quiet, but it was firm. She had used that voice once before, 6 months ago. Her father heard it, and stopped. Her mother sent word to the great house by way of the boy who tended the pigs. A short note. "Your son is safe. He is at Kettleford Farm. He is warm and sleeping. Send a carriage in the morning if it pleases you." Vivienne did not sign her name. That night she sat by the fire and watched the boys sleep. Her mother had made her change out of the wet dress. Her feet were bandaged. Her hands ached from the willow bark. She was tired to her bones. But she watched him breathe. She thought about what a strange thing life was. She thought about how the river had run high because of 3 days of rain, and how she had gone for mint that afternoon and not the morning, and how she had heard him because the crow had gone quiet at just the right moment. Any small thing changed, and he would have drowned, and she would never have known. She thought about his father, whom she had never met, the Duke of Ashcombe. She wondered what kind of man he was, that his little boy had been wandering by a swollen river alone. Then she was too tired to think, and she slept in the chair. The carriage came at dawn. Vivienne heard it before she saw it, the sound of 4 horses moving fast on the wet road. She stood up too quickly. Her feet ached. She went to the window. The carriage was black. It had no crest painted on the side, but the horses were matched greys, and the driver wore fine livery. It stopped in the yard. A man stepped out. He was tall. That was the first thing. He was very tall, and he stood as though he did not have to try. His coat was black, and his hair was dark, and even from the window she could see that his face was hard. Not cruel. Hard, like a stone that had been in a river for a long time. He looked at the small stone farmhouse. He looked at the door. He walked toward it. Vivienne turned from the window. "Papa," she said, "please, let me speak with him." Her father looked at her. Her father, who had shouted about the refused offer for 2 days. Her father, who had begged her to reconsider. Her father, who now understood, more clearly than any of them, exactly who was walking to his door. "Vivienne," he said, "do you know what you are doing?" "No," she said honestly, "but he is my guest, whether he knows it or not, and Tobias is my patient." Her father opened the door. The Duke did not bow. Dukes do not bow to farmers. But he removed his hat. That was more than his rank required. He stepped inside without asking. He filled the small front room. He smelled of cold morning air, and of horses, and of something else, leather, and a faint smoke, and something clean underneath. "Where is my son?" he said. "By the fire," said Vivienne. Sleeping, he turned his head. He saw her for the first time. His eyes were grey. They were the colour of the river had been the day before, when it ran full and cold. They rested on her face for one long moment, and she felt the weight of that look. It was the look of a man who missed nothing. He said nothing to her. He went to the fire. He knelt down beside the small figure wrapped in wool. He put his hand on his son's forehead. He kept it there. His shoulders, Vivienne saw this, his shoulders went down 1/2 inch. She would not have noticed if she had not been looking. The boy stirred. "Papa?" he whispered. "I am here. I fell in the water. I know. The lady pulled me out." The Duke's hand was still on his son's forehead. He did not look up. "Yes," she said, "I was safe." "You are safe." The boy sighed. He turned his face against the Duke's hand. He slept again. The Duke stayed where he was for a long time. His head was bowed. His hand did not move. Vivienne looked away, because she felt she was seeing something she was not meant to see. Her mother, who had been standing by the door twisting her apron, quietly went out into the kitchen. Her father followed. Vivienne was alone in the room with the Duke and his sleeping son. At last the Duke stood. He turned to her. "Your name," he said. "Vivienne Marlowe." He went still. She saw him go still. She saw his face understand something. She watched the moment happen. He said her name in his mind. He knew that name. He had signed a letter to that name 6 months before. "Marlowe," he said, out loud, as if to be certain. "Yes, you are the daughter of the man who sent you a very polite letter of refusal 6 months ago." Yes, the room was quiet. The fire crackled. The tall clock in the corner ticked. Outside a horse shifted and blew air through its nose. "I see," said the Duke. "You could not have known," she said. "There is no reason you would. I was not the one who signed the letter." "No," he said. "You were not." She did not know what to say to that. She looked at the floor. She was suddenly very aware that her hair was a mess, that her feet were bandaged and bare, that her dress was old and mended in 3 places. She lifted her chin anyway. "He will need a doctor," she said. "Not for now, but soon. His breathing was rough last night. His chest may take harm from the cold. He should be seen." "Yes, he is a brave boy." "He is a foolish boy," said the Duke. "He was told not to leave the garden. He is a boy of 7. 8 then. 8-year-old boys leave gardens. That is what they do." The Duke looked at her. His eyes did not soften exactly, but something moved behind them. It was the smallest possible thing. She would have missed it if she had blinked. "May I ask, Miss Marlowe," he said, "how you came to be at the river?" "I was gathering mint." "You went into the water?" "Yes, you cannot have known who he was." "No, you do not swim well. There is no reason a country girl would swim well." "I swim well enough for the river I have known all my life." He studied her. He studied her for so long that she felt heat rise up her neck. She held his gaze. She would not look away. She had refused his offer without meeting him. She would not now cower at meeting him. "You saved my son's life," he said at last, "and you did not know he was my son." "No, if you had known, would it have changed what you did?" The question was strange. She thought about it. She thought about it honestly. "No," she said. "I would have jumped in for any child, yours or anyone's." He nodded once. It was not approval, it was acknowledgement. He turned back to his son. "I will carry him now," he said. "The doctor will be at the house within the hour. I owe you." He stopped. He seemed to consider the word. "I owe your family a great deal." "You owe us nothing. Miss Marlowe, Your Grace." She said the words as evenly as she could. "A child fell in a river. I pulled him out. Any decent person would have done the same. You will not put a price on it. You will not send a purse. If you must repay this, you may repay it by teaching your son to stay away from the water when it runs high." The Duke looked at her again. She saw him consider a reply. She saw him decide not to make it. He bent down. He gathered his son in his arms. The boy was small against his chest. The Duke stood, easily, as though the child weighed nothing. "Good day, Miss Marlowe. Good day, Your Grace." He went out. The door shut behind him. The horses clattered on the yard. The carriage pulled away. Vivienne stood in the front room by the fire and listened until the last sound of the wheels was gone. Then her legs gave out, and she sat down hard in the chair, and she began to shake. She did not know why she was shaking. The danger was over. The boy was safe. The Duke was gone. She was in her own house. There was no reason to shake, but she shook for a long time. 2 days passed. The doctor's carriage came and went from the great house. Word travelled, as word did in villages, that the Duke's young son had nearly drowned and had been pulled from the river by a farmer's daughter. Some said her name. Some did not. Vivienne kept to the house. Her feet needed to heal. Her arm was sore. Her mother would not let her lift a bucket. On the 3rd day a letter came. It was on heavy paper. It bore no crest, but Vivienne knew the hand at once. She had seen it, once, 6 months ago, on a letter she had refused. She read it in the yard. "Miss Marlowe, my son wishes to thank the lady who took him from the river. He asks it every morning and every evening. He will not be quieted. I ask you to visit him. He will not travel. His chest is weak from the water. If you can come, name your day, and my carriage will fetch you. If you cannot, tell me so, and I will accept your answer." Ashcombe, that was all. No offer, no hint of the earlier letter, no suggestion that she was expected to do anything but see a small boy who wanted to say thank you. She read the letter twice. She folded it. She went inside and gave it to her mother. Her mother read it. Her mother looked up. "Vivienne, you must go." "I know. Do you know why he is not offering anything more? Because he understands." "Understands what?" "That I do not want anything from him. That I only ever wanted to be treated as a person, not as a solution to a problem. That is why I refused him before. Now he is asking for a small kindness for his son. He is not asking for me." Her mother watched her. Her mother, who had cried for 2 days when the refusal was sent, who now watched her only daughter with something new in her eyes, something like understanding. "Go, Vivienne. I will." The carriage came for her the next morning. She wore her best dress, which was not very fine. She wore her hair up in a plain knot. She wore her mother's shawl. She did not care what she looked like. She was going to see a small boy. The great house sat at the end of a long drive lined with old oaks. It was made of pale stone, and it was larger than any building she had seen in her life. She had passed it twice in her 17 years, always from the road. She had never been inside. She had never expected to be. A butler took her at the door. He led her without a word through halls that smelled of beeswax and cold flowers. Her footsteps rang on the marble. She could feel the chill of the stone through her thin shoes. She tried not to look at the paintings on the walls. She tried not to feel small. He brought her to a room upstairs. It was a bedroom. The curtains were partly drawn against the light. Tobias was sitting up in a great bed, wrapped in shawls, with a book in his lap. When he saw her, he dropped the book. "You came." Vivienne smiled. She could not help it. "I came." He held out his arms. She went to him. She sat on the edge of the bed. He hugged her hard around the neck, and she smelled again that faint smell of soap and lavender and clean sheets, and something under it that was just the smell of a small boy. "I told Papa you would come. You were right. I told him if he asked properly, you would come." He asked very properly. Tobias sat back and looked at her seriously. His eyes were dark, not grey like his father's. His mother's eyes, perhaps. Vivienne did not know. "Are you angry with him?" he asked. She was startled. "Why would I be angry with your papa? Because he sent a letter to marry you and you said no." She sat very still. "Who told you that?" "Papa did. Last night. He said I was old enough to know. He said I might meet you, and I should not say anything foolish. He said you had every right to refuse, and he had been wrong to write a letter like that." "He said that?" "Yes." Vivienne looked toward the window. She could not see the river from here, but she knew it was there, off through the trees, running lower now that the rain had stopped. "I am not angry with him, Tobias." Good, the boy considered her again. "I like you. I like you too. Papa says you saved my life. Your papa is very glad you are safe." "Papa does not say things like that. He does not say glad or sad or anything." But I could tell. Tobias picked up his book. "Will you read to me?" "The doctor says I have to rest. Reading counts as rest." "Reading counts as rest," she agreed. "What is the book?" "Pilgrim's Progress. Papa says I am too young for it, but I like the pictures." She took the book. She began to read. Her voice was quiet at first, then steadier. Tobias listened with his eyes half closed. She could see the shadow of the near drowning still on him, a pale color under his skin, a tiredness that had not been there before. But he was listening. He was warm. He was safe. She read for an hour. At some point in that hour, she heard the door open. She did not look up. She kept reading. She sensed him, at the edge of the room, standing where the boy could not see him. The Duke. Watching, not intruding. She kept reading. When Tobias finally fell asleep, she closed the book. She sat for a moment. Then she stood and turned. The Duke was there. He was leaning against the doorframe, one shoulder against the wood. His arms were crossed. He was watching the sleeping boy. When she moved, his eyes came to her. He raised one finger to his lips. He gestured with his head. She followed him out. He led her down the hall to a small sitting room. It was warm. A fire was lit. There was a tea tray on a low table. She realized suddenly how thirsty she was. "Please," he said. "Sit." She sat. He poured tea for her. He poured it himself. He did not ring for a servant. He handed her the cup, and their fingers did not touch. But he was close enough that she smelled again that faint smoke and leather and clean scent. He sat across from her. "Thank you for coming," he said. "He is a sweet boy. He is a lonely boy." She looked at him. He did not soften the words. He said them plainly, as if he were reading off a list. "He lost his mother when he was 5, the Duke said. He has not been the same since. He does not speak to my sister, who visits often. He does not speak to his tutor beyond what is required. He asks for you every morning, Miss Marlowe. I do not know quite what you did to him at that river, beyond the obvious, but something in him has decided about you." She looked at her tea. "Your Grace, you should call me Alaric. In this room. Only in this room. When we are outside it, we will use whatever is proper." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because I am about to say something to you, and I would like you to hear it as a man, not a title." She waited. He set his own cup down. He put his elbows on his knees. He looked at his hands. "I wrote you a letter 6 months ago," he said. "It was a cold letter. I meant it to be. I had been advised that you were sensible, that you would understand a practical arrangement, and I thought I was doing you the courtesy of not pretending to feelings I did not have. I was wrong. You were not wrong, to be honest. I was wrong to think that the honesty of naming a business was the same as the honesty of naming a person. I wrote to you as though you were a solution. I did not write to you as though you were a woman with a mind. He looked up at her. You refused me correctly. I want you to know that I understood that when your father's letter came. I was not angry. I was ashamed. She could not speak for a moment. I did not know that, she said finally. I did not tell anyone. Why are you telling me now? Because you are sitting in my house, and you have saved my son's life, and I do not want you to sit here and believe that I ever thought of you as anything less than a person who was quite right to want more than what I offered. The fire cracked. A log settled. The clock on the mantel ticked. She looked at the fire because she did not know where else to look. Thank you, she said. Her voice was low. For saying that, you do not owe me an answer. I know. I am not asking you to reconsider. I know. I am telling you what is true. That is all. She nodded. She did not trust her voice. She drank her tea. It was hot and slightly bitter, and it burned her tongue a little, and she was glad of it. He watched her drink. Then he said, May I ask you something? Yes. Why did you refuse me? Not the practical reasons. Your father wrote those. What was the true reason, she thought. She thought for a long time. He waited. He did not press her. He was, she noticed, a man who could sit inside a silence without needing to fill it. Because, she said at last, I have watched women marry for money all my life. Every one of them dies a little. My mother's cousin married a man she had met 3 times. He was rich. He was old. She wrote letters home for 2 years. Then she stopped writing. Then she died of a fever, alone in a large house, and no one who loved her was there. I do not want to die alone in a large house, Your Grace. I would rather live a poor life in a small one, with people who see me. He said nothing. That is why, she said. That is a good reason. It is my reason. Yes, the fire popped again. Somewhere in the house a door closed. A servant walked past in the corridor, and the sound of shoes faded. I would like to ask you something else, he said. Yes, may I write to you? She looked up. Write to me? Letters. Simply letters. You may answer or not as you choose. If you answer, I will write again. If you do not answer, I will not trouble you. I find that I would like, to know you as a person, not as a solution to any problem, not because of what you did at the river, because I sat in this room and heard you say what you just said, and I have never heard a woman speak so plainly in my life, and I would like to hear it again. She stared at him. She did not know what to say. You may refuse, he said. I am asking. I am not requiring. Take a day, Miss Marlowe, take a week, send word, or send nothing. Both answers are answers. She stood. She did not know why she stood. She just needed to be on her feet. He stood also, at once. He did not step toward her. I will think about it, she said. That is all I ask. He walked her down through the great house. He walked her to the door himself. He did not offer his arm. He kept a proper distance. When she was in the carriage, he closed the door for her. She looked at him through the window. His face was as still as the first day. Only his eyes moved. She rode home in silence. The letter came 4 days later. It was short. It described a hawk in his stable yard that had refused to hunt for 6 months and had suddenly, that morning, taken a partridge. He did not know why. He thought she might find it interesting. She read it 3 times. She wrote back the same evening. Her letter was short too. She said that hawks were like people. They chose the moments in which they were willing to be seen. She said her mother's laying hens had refused the coop for a week last spring, and then had returned to it without explanation. She said perhaps the hawk had simply decided to be a hawk again. His next letter came within 3 days. That was how it began. The letters came weekly. Then twice a week. He wrote about small things. A book he had read. A tenant whose roof had been fixed. Tobias's slow return to health, and the small daily improvements in him. She wrote back about the farm, about her mother's tea, about a stray cat who had come to her door and would not leave. She never wrote about money. He never mentioned it. That subject was, by silent agreement, closed. She saw him twice more that winter. Each time she visited Tobias. Each time the Duke was there, at the edge of the room, watching without intruding. Each time he walked her to the door himself. Each time he stayed a proper distance. Each time she looked at him through the window of the carriage and felt something turn in her chest that she did not name. She did not name it because she could not afford to name it. He was a duke. She was a farmer's daughter. She had refused him once, when he had offered marriage. He would not offer again. He had told her so. He was too proud and too respectful of her refusal to offer again. What they had now was letters and a sick boy and an unspoken agreement to be truthful. That was all it could ever be. She had known that from the start. She had chosen it anyway. Then the trouble came. It came in the form of Lady Petronilla Vaughan, who was the Duke's older sister. Vivienne had heard her name. Tobias had mentioned her twice. She was the great lady of the family, and she had a townhouse in London, and she came to Ashcombe Hall 4 times a year to do what she called put things right. She arrived in March. Vivienne learned of her arrival because a boy came from the great house with a note. The note was not from the Duke. It was from Lady Vaughan. It requested Miss Marlowe's presence for tea. It requested it in a way that was not truly a request. Vivienne showed the note to her mother. Her mother read it. Her mother's mouth pressed into a thin line. You do not have to go. I do have to go. Vivienne, she is his sister. She has heard about me. She is going to look at me. I would rather she look at me on a chair with a cup in my hand than let her think I am afraid. She went the next afternoon. Lady Vaughan was tall and thin. She had the Duke's grey eyes, but where his were quiet, hers were sharp. She wore a dark green gown that would have cost more than the Marlowe farm produced in a year. She received Vivienne in the small blue drawing room. She did not stand when Vivienne came in. Miss Marlowe. Sit, Vivienne sat. Tea? Please. Lady Vaughan poured. Her hand was steady. She handed the cup to Vivienne without looking at her. She sat back. She studied Vivienne over the rim of her own cup. So, she said, you are the girl who pulled Tobias out of the water. I am, and you are the girl who refused my brother. Vivienne set her cup down very carefully in the saucer. I am. That takes a certain kind of nerve, Miss Marlowe, to refuse a duke, or a certain kind of self-respect. Lady Vaughan's mouth twitched. It was not a smile. You are aware, she said, that my brother has been writing to you. I am aware. You are aware that this is talked of. I did not know that. Country people talk, Miss Marlowe. And the great house has servants, and servants have families, and letters that come from a duke to a farmer's daughter every week are noticed. My brother is not a fool. But he is a man, and men, when they are widowers, do not always see clearly. Lady Vaughan, let me finish. Vivienne closed her mouth. I have watched my brother mourn his wife for 3 years. I have watched him raise his son alone. I have watched him refuse every reasonable match that has been offered to him, from ladies of proper station, from families who understand what a duke's wife must do and be. And now, in the space of 4 months, he writes weekly to a girl whose only claim on him is a piece of luck at the edge of a river. She set her cup down. She leaned forward slightly. I want to tell you something, Miss Marlowe, and I want you to hear it clearly, because you strike me as an intelligent girl, and I do not wish to be misunderstood. My brother could marry the daughter of an earl. He could marry the daughter of a marquis. He will not marry a farmer's daughter with a torn shawl and mud on her hem, no matter how much he enjoys her cleverness in a letter. If you believe otherwise, you are more foolish than I took you for. And if you allow this correspondence to continue, you will end it as women in your position always end it, with a broken heart, a ruined reputation, and no husband willing to take you afterward. I say this to you as a kindness. It is not a kindness I owe you. But you saved my nephew's life, and so I will pay you in the only currency I have, which is the truth. The fire crackled. Vivienne looked at her tea. She did not pick it up. She thought of the Duke saying, I was ashamed. She thought of Tobias, small and warm, saying I told Papa you would come. She thought of the letter about the hawk. She thought of her mother's cousin, dead alone in a large house. She thought for a long time. Lady Vaughan, she said, and her voice was very quiet, but it was steady. May I ask you one question in return? You may. Did you love the man you married? Lady Vaughan's face did not change, but her hand, on the arm of her chair, tightened. That is not your concern, Miss Marlowe. No, it is not. And what your brother writes to me, and what I answer, is not yours. I hear what you say. I hear it clearly. I know what my station is. I know what his is. I have known both since I was old enough to know anything. I refused his offer of marriage 6 months ago because I would not be a solution to a problem. I did not refuse it because I did not know how large the gulf was between us. I knew. I still know. If your brother writes to me tomorrow, I will read the letter. If he writes to me the day after, I will read that one too. If he stops writing, I will not chase him. But I will not stop reading his letters because you have told me I should. He is a grown man. I am a grown woman. If either of us must be stopped, it is not by you. She stood. Thank you for the tea. Lady Vaughan stared at her. For a long moment she did not move. Then she said, Sit down, Miss Marlowe. No, thank you. I said sit down. And I said no. Vivienne's voice was still quiet. Good day, Lady Vaughan. She walked out of the room. Her legs were shaking. She did not let it show. She walked down the great hall. She reached the door. The butler, who had shown her in, showed her out. He did not meet her eyes. She thought perhaps he had heard. Country people talk, Lady Vaughan had said. So do butlers. The carriage that had brought her was still waiting. She got in. She did not cry. Not once. She rode home with her hands folded in her lap, and she looked out the window at the winter fields, and she did not cry. She thought Lady Vaughan would tell the Duke. She thought he would write to her. She thought perhaps he would agree with his sister. She thought perhaps the letters would stop. 2 days passed. No letter. 4 days. No letter. A week. No letter. On the 9th day, she went to the river. It was not the same river as before. The water was low now. The willow's branch, the one that had saved her, hung dry above the current. She sat on the bank. She did not gather anything. She just sat. She thought about how strange it was that she had chosen a hard truth over a soft lie, and how the hard truth now felt like a stone in her chest. She had done the right thing. She was sure of that. She had refused to be told what she could and could not read. She had defended her own dignity. And now the letters had stopped, and she did not know if it was because Lady Vaughan had spoken to him, or because Lady Vaughan had been right, and he had come to see it, and had put her aside quietly, as a duke may put aside anything he chooses. She sat by the river for a long time. The sun was low when she finally stood. She was surprised to see, as she walked back through the trees, that a horse stood at the edge of the wood. It was a tall grey. Its reins were looped over a low branch. Its rider stood beside it. Alaric. She stopped walking. He was not dressed for a visit. He wore a heavy riding coat, and his boots were muddy, and his hair was disordered from the ride. He looked as if he had not slept well. Miss Marlowe, he said, Your Grace. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. He said, My sister told me what she said to you. Ah, she thought I should know. She thought I would agree with her. And do you? No. The wind moved in the bare branches. Somewhere a crow called. Vivienne stood very still. I have not written this week, he said, because I did not trust myself to write only what my sister would allow me to write. I did not want to send a letter that pretended nothing had changed. Something has changed. I have known it for some months. I did not wish to speak of it because I gave you my word that I would not offer again. You gave me your word. Yes, then keep it. He looked at her. That is what I am here to do, he said. I am not here to offer you anything. I gave you my word. I keep it. I am here to tell you that I have thought about what my sister said, and I have thought about what she was right about, and I have thought about what she was wrong about. She is right that people are talking. She is right that if I marry you, some will call it a scandal. She is right that a duke's wife has duties that will fall hard on a woman not raised to them. Yes, she is wrong about everything else. About what else? About who you are, about what you are worth, about what would break, if I asked, and what would not. He stopped. His jaw worked. I have kept my word, Miss Marlowe. I have not asked. I will not ask, but I will not stop writing to you either, unless you tell me to. That is what I came to say. She looked at him. The grey horse blew air through its nose. The sun was almost gone. The cold was starting to come up out of the ground. Your Grace, she said. Her voice came out soft. May I say something? Please. I have been sitting by the river all afternoon. I was thinking about my mother's cousin, the one who died in the large house. I told you about her. I remember. I told you I did not want to be her. You did. I still do not want to be her. No, but she did not die because she married a duke. She died because she married a man who never wrote to her, who never sat in a room with her and asked her a question and waited for the answer, who never told her, on any day of any year, that he had once done something wrong and been ashamed of it. She died because she was alone in a marriage, not because the marriage was to a rich man. He did not speak. I have been thinking, she said, that I confused two things when I refused you. I thought I was refusing rank, but I was refusing loneliness. Those are not the same thing. No, I do not know, she said, and her voice was quieter still, what it would be like to be your wife. I do not know if I could learn what a duchess must know. I do not know if the talk of the country would break me. I do not know if your sister would ever look at me with anything but disgust. There is much I do not know. There is much I do not know either. But I know, she said, that I have read every letter you have sent me. I know that when a week passed without one, I felt it. I know that I sat by the river this afternoon and I was not sad about the river. I was sad about you. That is what I know. He took one step toward her. He stopped. He did not step again. You told me, he said carefully, that I was not to ask. You are not to ask. Then I am telling you, she said, that if you were to ask, my answer would not be the same as it was 6 months ago. The wood was very quiet. She could hear his breath. She could hear her own. She could hear the small sound of the grey horse pulling at a piece of grass. The cold air pressed against her face. Her heart was so loud she thought he must hear it. He did not step forward. He did not move at all. He stood in the last of the light with the muddy boots and the disordered hair and the coat that was too heavy for the season, and he looked at her, and she looked at him, and neither of them looked away. He said, May I ask you now? Yes, Miss Marlowe. Yes, Vivienne. Yes, will you marry me? Not because it will save your family. Not because it will settle any debt. Not because it will give my son a mother, though I will not pretend that is not part of it. Because I have written you 37 letters, and I have read every letter you have written to me until the paper wore thin, and I do not want to write to you any more. I want to sit in the same room with you and ask you a question and wait for the answer. She did not answer at once. She let the moment stretch. She looked at him. She looked at the grey horse, and the dark trees, and the sky going purple behind him. She thought about her mother, who had cried for 2 days. She thought about her father, who had shouted. She thought about Lady Vaughan, and the tea in the blue drawing-room, and the words broken heart and ruined reputation, and no husband willing to take you. She thought about the river, and the small blue face, and the willow branch, and her whispered pleas to no one. She thought about Tobias, saying, I told Papa you would come. Yes, she said. Yes? Yes, Alaric. He crossed the ground between them in 3 steps. He did not sweep her into his arms. He did not kiss her. He stopped 1 step away, and he lifted her hand. And he pressed it between both of his. His hands were warm. Her hand was cold. He held it a long time. He looked down at her hand, at the small scars along her palm from the willow bark, at the knuckle she had scraped on a stone yesterday, at the plain skin of a girl who worked. He did not speak. He simply held her hand. Then he lifted it and pressed his mouth very lightly to the back of her fingers. He set the hand down. He looked at her again. "Come," he said. "You are cold. You will ride back with me. I will speak to your father tonight." Yes, he lifted her onto the grey horse. He mounted behind her. She could feel the warmth of him through his coat. She could smell the smoke and the leather and the clean scent that was under it. The horse walked slowly along the wood road. She did not speak. He did not speak. She thought perhaps, in her whole life, she had never been so quiet and so happy at once. They were married in the small stone church at Renmore. There were more people in it than the church had ever held. Her mother wept. Her father, who had shouted 6 months before, could not stop smiling. Tobias was the ring-bearer, and he dropped the ring once and picked it up very seriously and did not smile, because he had been told this was a solemn duty. Lady Vaughan was there. She wore dark red. She sat in the second row. When the vows were said, she looked at Vivienne with a face that gave nothing away. Later, at the small reception at Ashcombe Hall, she came to Vivienne with a glass in her hand. "Duchess, Lady Vaughan. I said many things to you in the blue drawing-room. You did. I do not take them back. I did not expect you to." Lady Vaughan looked at her. For the first time her eyes were not sharp. "But I was wrong," she said, "about one thing." "Which?" "About who you were." She drank from her glass. "Welcome to the family." She walked away. She never spoke of it again. But she was, in her own hard way, kind after that. She was not warm. She would never be warm. But when a certain gossiping baroness tried to make a fool of Vivienne at a London ball, 3 months later, Lady Vaughan cut the baroness dead in front of 6 witnesses and made sure everyone in that room knew whose side she was on. That was her way. Vivienne learned to be grateful for it. There was one more thing, in the middle of that first year, that Vivienne learned by accident. It was in the autumn. She was walking in the village. She stopped at the small cottage of an old woman named Mrs. Pethick, whose husband had been a shepherd and who was now alone. Mrs. Pethick had been kind to Vivienne as a child. Vivienne brought her a basket of apples and sat with her for an hour by the fire. As Vivienne rose to leave, Mrs. Pethick caught her hand. "Your Grace, before you go." "Yes?" "I have wanted to tell you about the roof." "The roof?" "The one on this cottage. It was leaking terribly last winter. I did not know what I would do. I could not afford to have it mended. And I could not stay here another winter with the wet coming through. I was going to have to go to my daughter in the north, and I did not want to leave the cottage. My husband is buried in the yard behind. I did not want to be far from him. Yes, in November, a man came. He said he had been sent to fix the roof. I asked him who had sent him. He would not say. He mended it in 3 days. He would not take a penny. He said the cost was already paid. He went away. I asked in the village who had done such a thing. Nobody would say. But there was one boy, you know him, Tom, from the Ashcombe stable, who said he had ridden with the Duke that autumn, and the Duke had stopped in my lane one day and looked at the cottage a long time. And the Duke had asked Tom which roof it was that leaked. Vivienne stood very still. He did not tell you, Mrs. Pethick said. No, I did not think he had. He is not a man who tells. Mrs. Pethick's old hand tightened on Vivienne's. I told you now, because I thought you should know what kind of man you married. Not the one people in London think they know. The one who fixes the roof of an old woman he does not know, in a village he does not live in, and tells no one. Vivienne walked home along the lane. She did not cry, because it was not that kind of feeling. She did not run, because it was not that kind of feeling either. She walked. She thought. She did not mention it that night. She did not mention it the next week. She mentioned it, quietly, one evening in December when they were sitting by the fire, and Tobias was asleep upstairs, and the snow was coming down soft against the tall windows. Alaric, Mrs. Pethick's roof. He did not look up from the book in his lap. What of it? You mended it. I paid a man to mend it. He mended it. That is not the same. You did not tell me. It was not important. She looked at him. He was still reading, or pretending to. It was important to her, she said. He turned a page. He did not answer. Alaric. Thank you. He looked up then. He looked at her. His grey eyes had that same weight they had had the first morning, in her mother's front room, when he had realized who she was, but softer now. Steady. You are welcome, my love, he said. He went back to his book. She sat with her tea in her hands, and she watched the fire, and she watched the snow, and she watched the man she had refused, once in a letter she had never regretted, because if she had said yes then, she would never have been sitting here now. With this quiet, in this warmth, with this understanding between them. Some time later, Tobias grew strong. He rode a small brown pony badly, and then well. He laughed often. He called her Vivienne, and then, one spring day when he was 10, he called her Mama, once, without seeming to notice he had said it. She did not correct him. She did not make a moment of it. She only, very quietly, kissed the top of his head as he ran past her into the garden. He never called her anything else again. The river at Renmore still ran, some springs high and some springs low. Vivienne walked along it sometimes when she visited her mother. She would stop at the bend where the willow bent low. She would touch the bark of the branch that had once held her. She would think of the small blue face, and the whispered please, and the long climb up the bank. She would think of how she had said no to a letter, and yes to a man, and how those two things had been, all along, the same kind of yes. Yes to being seen. Yes to being known. Yes to the small, hard truths that a life gets built on, one after another, like stones in a wall. She would walk home along the lane, and the smoke would rise from the chimney of the great house at the end of the drive. And she would see him waiting for her at the door, not because it was his duty, but because he had heard her coming, and he had chosen to be there. That was the story. That was all of it. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If this moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.